Hey guys, what's happening? Seth Joyner here. Welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. Happy Tuesday to everyone. As we wind down to the preseason, training camp, just itching, bursting at the seams, waiting for football to revive us all. Hey, the NBA Finals are great, great series going on right now between the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks. But there's nothing like football. And I am just, bursting at the seams, ready for training camp to get started so we can talk about our birds, waiting for training camps across the board to kick off. So, we can start procrastinating about what's going to happen in each conference, in each division within each conference, what everything is going to look like. Just really, really interested. Hey, you're looking at the background. Yeah, I'm doing the show today from a hotel room. I'm actually in Philadelphia. I'm in Hershey, Pennsylvania, as a matter of fact, participating in the Mid-Penn celebrity golf event. And, really it's a golf tournament. It's a breast cancer golf tournament. So, I'm trying to lend my celebrity and my golf game to raising some funds for the said cause. A lot of great players are here. Jaws is here. Michael Vick is here. Beasley Reese is here. Gerald Henderson. Mike Quick is coming in. It's just a myriad of guys that's coming in. We come in for this event all the time, every year, and it's absolutely phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of days hanging out with my guys, playing some golf, and raising some money for charities. That's the most important thing, to fight breast cancer. The second half of the show, hopefully, I got the punky QB from the Chicago Bears, Super Bowl champion 1985. Jim McMahon's going to join me. We're going to talk a little bit of quarterbacks. But right now, hey, we're going to open it up and, run with another, Talk to him Tuesday, taking your questions. What do you guys want to talk about? I read something today that, kind of bothered me. There was a leak in the media today that there are these anonymous players on the team that's questioning whether Nick Sirianni is the guy. See, I got a problem with that. Don't be a part of the problem. Be a part of the solution. Your job is to come in and play football. Now, a lot of people will ask, hey, who is this coming from? A young guy, I can tell you with certainty, does not have the cachet or the confidence to make a comment like that, even if he does it anonymously, because he's too afraid of the ramifications of what might happen, okay? Only a veteran on this football team would make these assertions, and confidence to a journalist who he trusts that will keep it anonymous but float it out there. My good friend Glenn McNow, I saw a tweet he put up today. He said, I call bullshit, and to be honest with you, I agree with him, because, what is the purpose of trying to tear down this young coach, and prevent this football team that we all love from being able to get back to where we want to see them be at this juncture, this point in time? We don't know what this football team is going to be. We don't know what Nick Sirianni is going to put on the field as far as an offense. We don't know what Gannon is going to put on the field as far as a defense. We have no idea what special teams are going to look like, okay? Let's pump our brakes and try to figure out a way to just slow down, wait for training camp to open, and see what it is that Nick Sirianni is going to do, and see how he's going to take the talent that's been amassed through the draft, what was left over in free agency, and how he puts it all together, okay? We all know, that this is, in a lot of people's eyes, a transition year. And I would be slanted to the side of believing that, yes, it is a transition year, but I also believe that the Philadelphia Eagles have an opportunity, especially in the NFC East, that's really trying to catch up. For the longest, the Eagles and the Cowboys ruled the roost. the Washington football team is coming. The New York Giants, Daniel Jones is the greatest question mark as far as that roster is concerned, but they're getting better, okay? When you consider the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones is going to figure out a way to screw it up. He always does. You know, they're the most talented offense to underachieve that I think I've ever seen in pro football. But the Philadelphia Eagles are sitting right there, and everybody wants to say, oh, they're going to be 8. Let me correct myself. They're going to be 8 and 9. Oh, they're going to be 7 and 10. You know, I beg to differ. You know, I think that if, okay, and I know some of y'all sitting at home saying to yourself, if it was the 5th, we all be drunk. If, okay, I'm saying if the offensive line can stay healthy, if the defensive line can stay healthy, then this football team has the opportunity to be competitive. Now, that's a tall tale when you take into consideration how they've been decimated almost at every position over the last 3 years with injuries. Something's got to give. I mean, at some point in time, luck's got to fall their way, you know. So if they can stay healthy, then in my opinion, they can be competitive. But my biggest thing is, let's just figure out a way. Let's figure out a way to give this young coach a chance. Okay. You guys have heard me say it 1,000 times about, you know, how I felt about Doug Peterson, you know, but when those players stepped up in his defense, then at the end of the day, it's really all about how those players buy into what he's selling. And how can you tell me after just OTAs, not training camp, not preseason, not regular season games, but just after OTAs, you mean to tell me we got a veteran on this roster that's questioning whether Nick Sirianni can be a leader of men? You don't even know yet. You don't even know what he can do. You don't know what he's going to bring to the table. So let's give him a chance. Let's slow our roll. I know it's Philadelphia. This is what we do. But let's slow our roll and try to figure out and give the guy a chance to show what it is that he can do. Okay. And if he doesn't pan out, he doesn't pan out. You know, we're gonna chop him up and cut him up every which way to Sunday anyway if he can't. But let's at least wait and see what he can do, because those were the same things that we were saying about Doug Peterson. You know, his first 2 years, and then boom, in year 2, he wins a Super Bowl, a championship that we hadn't experienced in 57 years. Okay, so you just never know. You never know. All right, so let's pump our brakes as far as that's concerned. All right, I'm going to go back to the top, look at some of you guys' questions here, and we'll bang out some of these questions until hopefully Jim McMahon joins us. And hey, if he doesn't join us, we'll just keep banging out questions and espousing our opinions. Okay, let's see. Mr. T12 says, good evening, people. Football is less than a month away. You are so right, and I am so excited. I think everybody's excited because, you know, listen, the Philadelphia and most major sports cities, they love their basketball team, their hockey team, and their baseball team. But let's be honest, football rules the rules. Everybody wants football. Everybody wants to watch football. Everybody wants to see football. And we're in that unenviable space right now where by the time that the NBA Finals ends, there's like this dead space between then and when training camp opens, because all you got is baseball. And we know with 162 games this early in the season, you know, I like baseball during the playoffs. 162 games is just too many to watch every single day. So, you know, Mr. T12, listen, I'm with you. A month away. I'm excited. Can't wait for it to happen. All right. Let's see what else we got. Brian Conrad, how you know I'm up here by Harrisburg? Anyway, thank you, man. I appreciate the welcome. I love it up here. Great golf up here. Great cause we're here for. Always have a good time when I'm up and around this area. So thanks for the welcome. Let's see who else we got. Hey, Adam. Adam's exploit. I think you probably were referring to. This is the question he put up or the comment. He said Barrett talked about this today on his the middle show. Why don't you espouse a little more about that? Let me know what you're talking about, so I can expand or expound upon that. I got a feel on this, the comments and the stuff that came out about Nick Sirianni. Okay. Let's see. Okay, well let's do this. So Steven says, do you think Nick Sirianni's inexperience will hinder the team this season, or will he be better than people expected? I don't think anybody really knows, and that's my point. As a player, your job is to prepare and get ready to do what it is that you're paid to do. No one really knows. Listen, Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie, they hired him for whatever their reasons are. They saw something, they heard something, they believe something about Nick Sirianni, that they believe that he's the guy to take this organization into the next phase. Okay. I don't know, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because I've been at the other end of the spectrum before, where I poo-pooed a guy and then he turned around and brought, Philadelphia's first modern day championship, first modern day Super Bowl. So my response is just pump your brakes. Let's slow down and wait and see what Nick Sirianni does, what Gannon does, what all of these coaches that he's brought in here. Let's wait and see what they do, how they develop talent, how they adjust to pressure situations, what kind of offense are they going to run? We don't even know that. What kind of defense are they going to run? We don't even know. We don't even know what kind of special teams scheme they're going to run, and we want to beat Nick Sirianni up and his staff way before we even know what they're going to be. To me, that's a little unfair. It's unfair. As a fan, you should be rooting for Nick Sirianni because you want him to succeed, because you want the football team to succeed. If he's not going to succeed, then guess what? We're going to be looking for a new head coach. We're going to be turning the roster over again. All of these things that, that keeps organizations in purgatory, in mediocrity hell, that's not what we want to see for the Philadelphia Eagles. So whether you like Nick Sirianni or not, we want to see him succeed, and we ought to be doing everything that we can to try to support him, in that endeavor. All right. Let's see what else we got here. So Jay Koch wants to know, it seems like the offensive line played harder when Hurts was asserted in under center last year. It's funny, Jay, because I was having this conversation with these gentlemen just a couple of days ago, at the golf course. One of the guys admittedly said that, hey, I am a Carson Wentz apologist. I think they pulled the plug too early. I told him, hey, listen, I don't think it was a situation where they pulled the plug so much as it was a situation when he wanted out. If a player wants out, doesn't do you any good as an organization to try to change his mind. The best thing you can do is get the value for him and move him if he doesn't want to be here. There's always been these underlying things as far as Carson Wentz was concerned, that really bothered me. There were times, and I look at the small things, the details within the game. So when Nick Foles was playing, every single time that Nick Foles got sacked or Nick Foles, scrambled and he got hit and he was getting up off the ground, an offensive lineman would always reach down and pick him up. A running back would always reach down and pick him up. I didn't really see that with Carson Wentz. You know, you might have seen Jason Kelsey pick him up every once in a while. You might see, you know, Zach Ertz run over and pick him up. But the majority of the time, you just didn't see that kind of fight for him. You go back to the playoff game where he got knocked out by Jadeveon Clowney. You know, there's no way in the world that the Philadelphia Eagles offense shouldn't have picked up a 15-yard penalty, because you can't hit my quarterback like that and just walk away with no penalty and no repercussions for it. Okay, some offensive linemen should have hit Jadeveon Clowney up beside his head, in the back of the head, to send a message that you don't handle my quarterback like that. But you saw nobody step up. Nobody came to his defense. Okay? Now, you can talk about the offensive line playing harder for Jalen Hurts if you want to. The one thing that Jalen Hurts did better than Carson Wentz last year is he had a clock in his head. Okay? He knew when to get out and when to give up on the play. And he knew when to make good decisions. Now, was it all good? Absolutely not. I know that there are people in the timeline right now that are thinking that I believe that Carson Wentz was less of a quarterback than Jalen Hurts. That wasn't my point. I wanted to see Carson James Wentz come in and compete against a first-year rookie, second-year quarterback for his job. I still think that at this point in time, Carson Wentz is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. That doesn't mean that Jalen Hurts is not going to catch up, okay? That doesn't mean that Jalen Hurts doesn't have the moxie and really what it takes to be the quarterback in Philadelphia. That's a big difference. I think that Philadelphia was too much for Carson Wentz. I really do. I think that between the media and the fans and everything else that went on, Philadelphia was just too much of a city for Carson Wentz. But I think Jalen Hurts is built for Philadelphia. Okay. Now, as far as how the offensive line plays, you know, I think that quarterbacks sometimes can make decisions that make their offensive line look better, and sometimes their offensive line plays better for whatever reason that is. Okay. It wasn't like Jalen Hurts came in and lit it up. He started the last 4 games of the year, well, 3.5, and he was basically 1-4. Massive improvement has to happen. But the only way that improvement is going to happen is that our offensive line stays healthy, that we use the stable of running backs that we have, and we put him in the best position to succeed. I don't necessarily believe that guys wouldn't play for Carson. I still think that there are some guys that didn't like him, and that can't happen for a starting quarterback, a franchise quarterback. You know, you've got to endear yourself to everybody. But at the end of the day, you can't tell me, I just will not believe that guys that had to block for him wouldn't block for him because they didn't like him. And then all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts came in the game and they liked Jalen Hurts better, so they blocked better and they played better. I'm not believing that. I'm not believing that in the least little bit. Okay. But I do believe that there's a difference between, you know, how a quarterback interacts and what he does with his offensive line and how those guys feel about each and every player. It's just a different dynamic. And I'm waiting for my dude right here because it's great, because this question just popped up, you know, and I'm going to bring him in. You guys know him as the Punky QB, Super Bowl champion for the Chicago Bears. Listen, he is one of the greatest teammates. And you guys know I play with some really good guys. But this guy coming up right here, he is one of the best teammates that I have ever played with in my 13 years of playing. He would lay his body on the line week after week after week. And you know what? He's just a great dude to hang out with, a bundle of laughs. I'm going to bring him in and we're going to start talking about, you know, some of this quarterback nonsense that you guys are talking about. One James, Jim, McMahon. Mac, how you doing, brother?
Hey, Seth, can you hear me?
I hear you. How you doing, man?
Okay,
You a little
good.
jet lagged?
I'm a little tired, kid.
Okay.
Just
All
got off the
right.
plane. Well, I drove I drove from Sacramento last night home, and then drove early this morning to LA to drop the RV back, and then flew home. And here we are, kid. Thanks for the intro, by
Man,
the way.
listen, I appreciate you, man. You know what? I
Love
just
you
had a
as
I just had
a
a
teammate as well, brother.
so I just had
Had a great
a
time.
guy that asked a question about the offensive line playing harder for one quarterback opposed to another quarterback. Give me your take on that. Can you hear me?
I mean, you can tell if it, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. So
Okay.
okay, so the
Yeah,
question
I heard the question.
okay.
All right. Yeah, that happens a lot, actually. You know, the offensive lineman can tell if the quarterback knows what the hell he's doing or not. And a lot of times, just by the basic knowledge of the game, if the quarterback understands that, the offensive lineman, I think they'll follow him and do whatever. But sometimes, there's some animosity, and it could get you killed.
Really? Well, I just kind of poo-pooed that a second ago. I just, I'm like, if you're a professional, you block for the guy that's out there. But obviously that's not necessarily the situation, huh?
Well, I mean, people have their favorites. That's why I was always friendly with my offensive line. I mean, I knew that's where my bread was buttered. If they didn't block, I was dead. I mean, I was dead half the time anyway with that, whoever we had over there on the right. But anyway, uh, yeah, go ahead.
So I want to ask you this because, I'm sure you're aware of the situation that transpired last year, in Philadelphia with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. Um, Carson struggled all season long. They replaced him with Jalen Hurts. And then at the end of the year, Carson basically asked for an out. Um, Give me your opinion on how that plays out, because my thing was, okay, you just signed an extension. You're gonna make $32 million a year, and you're asking to be traded. Because you don't want to compete for your job. Rather, you want to go somewhere where they just hand you the job. And that's the thing. That's the only thing that bothers me about Carson Wentz. Because at the end of the day, and I get people all the time, Jim, that are like, you know what? The quarterback position is the only position that you do that with. But I'm sure that wasn't the situation with you, when you came in the league. It was all about competition. Give me a chance to beat that guy out, okay? And I'm good with that. Just give me a chance.
No,
So why
no,
not compete?
no doubt about that. I didn't even know he signed an extension. That's how much I follow the game. But yeah, that's unfortunate. If you like you just said, if you don't want to compete, why he's going to go somewhere where they can hand him the job. I wouldn't want the job that way. I didn't care wherever I went. If I could have went to Frisco with Montana, I would have felt that I wanted to be the starter. Same there in Philly with Randall. Wherever I went, I felt I should be playing. And if you don't feel like that and you don't want to compete, you know, I, I guess go collect your money somewhere else.
Well, Jim, as the number 2 overall pick, his comment was, I felt like this was my team. Okay. But when you play the way he played last year through 12 weeks, it wasn't a point that it wasn't his team. It was just a point of, dude, you're not playing well. We don't have any other choice but to sit you down, you know, and that pissed him off. And once he was pissed off about the fact that he was no longer the starter and that he, in all probability, he wasn't going to play again anymore the rest of the season, he wanted out.
Right. Well, it's not your team if you're not winning. I mean, you got to be able to you got to be able to put some W's up on the board, or you're going to get replaced. It doesn't matter who you are. Eventually, things they're going to catch up to you like that. So, you got to win in order to have a team to rally around you.
Well, he's now gone, and we got Jalen Hurts, as the quarterback. Um, Kind of problematic today because, I was reading an article today that an anonymous source, told a reporter that they don't feel like Nick Sirianni, who's the new head coach of the Eagles, is a leader of men. Now, they've gone through OTAs. They haven't seen this coach during training camp, during preseason, or a regular season game before. And yet, someone's spilling the beans. And I asserted earlier, I'm like, no young guy is going to say this. It's a veteran on the team that's comfortable and confident with that reporter that he'll never leak that information, just putting this out there. And I think it's a bunch of crap because you got to give the guy a chance to show what he can do as a head coach before you make this assertion and start to try to tear down the team.
Yeah, I don't even know who the coach is. So, like I said, I don't follow the game a hell of a lot. But that was the pretty much the situation when Mike Ditka got to town. Him and I were first years together. He had been an assistant coach in the league, which I'm sure this guy has been too. And so nobody knew anything about his coaching style or anything else. But he made it clear right out of the gate. He said, "Hey, the good news is that in 3 or 4 years we're going to the Super Bowl." And he said, "The bad news is most of you guys ain't going to be in this room."
Mm.
And he made a promise, and he kept that promise. Out of all those guys in that room that day, there was probably maybe 30, 40% that made it all the way through to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, like you said, you got to give the guy a chance. See what he can do.
Well, listen, Philadelphia like I know Philadelphia. I mean, it's going to be tough on him. But listen, I think that they have an opportunity, to be a competitive team this year, even though everybody feels like it's going to be a down year. But I bring that up just because we don't know what the guy is going to be. We don't know what he's going to be. I mean, you take Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson came to town, and everybody was like, well, why did they hire this guy? He's never been a head coach before. Mike Lombardi comes out and said he's the worst head coach in all of football. He shouldn't be a head coach. And in his second year, he takes the team to a Super Bowl and wins the Super Bowl. That, for me, was like lesson learned because I was one of those people who was like, why would you hire that guy? That's like Gomer Pyle, as a head coach. But at the end of the day, the players loved it. The players believed in it, And like I know, the hardest thing in the world for a coach is to get 52 guys or 53 guys to buy into what you're selling. And if he could get it done, what makes you think that this next guy can't get it done? But you got to give him a chance. You got to give him a shot.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Doug and I were teammates up in Green Bay with Brett. Excuse me. And yeah, good man. I was glad to see the success he had. He actually played good in Tahoe this week. I played so bad. Well, my Wentz game was even worse than you've seen it. I started putting from like 40 yards away. It was terrible.
Well, hey, listen, I hope that Doug gets back in the game because I do think that he's a good head coach, and I think he got a raw deal here, from an organization that really wanted to micromanage everything that he was doing.
Welcome to the new world, huh?
Oh yeah. So let's kind of move around the rest of the NFL a little bit. We go back to your original stomping grounds. The Chicago Bears, drafts Justin Fields out of Ohio State, but they bring in Andy Dalton, and they got Nick Foles in a backup role, and Matt Nagy comes out and says that essentially Andy Dalton is his starter. Good decision or bad decision? Do you put, that first round guy on the field and let him grow right now? Or do you let Andy Dalton salt away, 3 or 4 games in the beginning of the season before you actually put this young kid into play?
Well, I think at the start of the season, Dalton being in the league as much as he has, it all depends on training camp. This guy might come out and just blow everybody away. You never know. But just to start the camp, I mean, he's got to be the first guy. I think Dalton does. But I don't know much about Fields either. I know they won a lot of games at Ohio State, but Chicago's a tough place to be a quarterback as well. So again, it's all about he starts winning games, especially now what? It's only 3 preseason games,
right?
So they're going to make a decision pretty quick, week 1 or first or second preseason game, I would think, on who he should be who should be starting in the first week of the season.
Right. So then let's jump over to the New York Jets. a guy that came from your alma mater, Zach Wilson, a guy that rolls up the draft ranks pretty quick. Um, Seems like he's going to be the starter coming out the gate. Interesting with a new head coach. The organization in New York, I mean, listen, they've struggled for a long time, but this kid's got a lot of talent, a lot of ability. He can throw the ball, he can run the ball, he can do it all. But the question always is, every single time the Jets draft a quarterback, are they going to elevate him or are they going to destroy him? You look at what they did to Sam Darnold. It's a darn shame, you know. And I'm hoping because they got a guy in Robert Saleh, the new head coach of the New York Jets. He's going to operate a little differently. I'm hoping that for Zach Wilson that the dynamics will be different. But I know a little bit about him because he comes from BYU. Your old stomping ground.
Well, the little bit I do know about him is what Tommy Homo, my old teammate there, who's now the AD, he's told me this kid can play. I got to meet him at Steve Young's golf tournament this summer, and I talked to him a little bit and said, hey, good luck, because when you get drafted that high, that means usually the team sucks. So I said, you got anybody around you? I said, how's your offensive line? I said, yeah, I wouldn't even care about receivers or running backs. I said, who do I have up front? And he feels pretty confident right now. He said, I think they made a trade or they drafted somebody, tackle or something early on. But he feels confident they got, like you said, a new coach. So, it's all depends on what happens up front.
Jim, I mean, this,
Did you lose
when
me?
you look at the NFL is so much more different today than it was, when we played. Um, Everything from the minimization of the running back position, which in my opinion, back in our day, the running back was a quarterback's best friend, especially if he was a good darn running back. To,
Takes a lot of
you
heat
know,
off.
well, absolutely. To almost to the over elevation, if you will, of the quarterback position. Now, correct me if you feel different about it, but sometimes I think that we overzealously value a quarterback. Now it's different when you're talking about a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. But honestly, how many organizations have an opportunity to get a guy like that? You know, so every team is trying to find one of those guys. Almost to the detriment of the team because everybody has to throw the ball all over the map. And I get it; you got to throw the ball in order to win. But
You got to run
I've
it in
I've
December
always
and
felt like
January.
as what's that?
I said you better be running it in December and January.
Well, hey,
Depending
listen. I
on where
mean,
you play.
absolutely. But the thing is, when you think about you know the NFL today and how these gurus are thinking today, they're like, hey, you throw the ball early and often, and you get a lead, and then you run it out in the fourth quarter. But my point of contention has always been, what happens when you're playing against great defenses and you're not able to move the ball down the field. You're not able to get those chunk plays. Now you've selectively made yourself one dimensional because you won't run the football. I just feel like, especially when you're talking about these young quarterbacks, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, um, you know, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, all of these young quarterbacks is coming into the NFL. The best thing that an organization, a coaching staff can do is give these guys a great running back because now you open up play action pass. You open up play action pass, you make these guys so much more comfortable, and now whatever you want in the passing game you can have, and your playbook is actually open, opposed to coming out, throwing it on first down, handing it off on second down, throwing it on third down every single series.
I agree. I agree. Running back is a key position. You don't really need two of them anymore, but uh, because these guys are all running, I don't know what they call it, the K gun or whatever, one back and they spread it out. But I kind of like that offense because that's what I got to do in college, and it's pretty easy to identify who's where and who's coming, and so that was always my strong suit anyway. If I can sit back in the shotgun and just say, I know he's coming, so I can get rid of the football. But yeah, you definitely have to have really all facets of your game. If your kicking game sucks, that could cost you too. But running back is definitely a big key. It wasn't, in Chicago for us, with Walter Payton. I mean, and everybody knew he was going to run, and we still got that done, and that's a credit to our offensive line, which is one of my guys going into the Hall this year. He was elected last year, but
Mm-hmm.
the ceremony will be this year, Jimbo Covert, and I think that there's a couple more guys that should be on that list as well, but only time will tell.
So I'll ask you this because you just alluded to it. I mean, how much would you have loved to play in today's NFL, where defensive players, D linemen can't hit you? You get to like sit back there in the shotgun and just sling it all over the place 50 times a game. I mean, if you look back on your career and tell me what's the maximum amount of times you ever threw the ball in one game?
Phew, I couldn't even tell you. I don't remember most of the games, so. Uh, I would say maybe 35,
Wow.
and that might have been in San Diego. The
Mm.
Super Bowl I only threw the ball 20 times. We only played about three, barely a little over the half. So, but 20 times, I mean, come on. I used to throw that many in the first quarter in college.
Mm. Well, I mean, my thing is, my problem with that too is how do you make the comparison? You know, you're watching these guys today throw the ball 40, 50, 55 times a game, and you're going to compare these quarterbacks of this era with the quarterbacks of your era, who only threw the ball 20 to 30 times a game. I mean, it's hard for me to rectify that because you know what? I played kind of in at the bottom end of that era where these quarterbacks would come out and throw the ball, 30, 35 times max. And now I'm watching these guys throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. And I'm like, but you're supposed to throw the ball for 300 yards if you put it in the air 50 times. Don't the numbers just say that?
Exactly.
So, I
Well,
mean, when
that's
you're talking about greatness,
well, that's all.
Jim, how do you compare a Patrick Mahomes to a Dan Marino or a Joe Montana? How do you do that? Because he's throwing the ball all the time.
Yeah, it's all about statistics now. Yeah, it's all how many yards you got, how many touchdowns. But my stat was how many wins you got.
Mm.
It didn't matter if I threw the ball for 300 yards, which I really did. As long as I got a W, that's all I cared about.
Well, these organizations now, it's all about blowing the scoreboard up. The rules have changed in a way where they just want to outscore everybody and throw the ball all over the yard. That's good for quarterbacks who got all the answers to the question. It's like Tom Brady. Every year everybody asks him like, hey man, when you retire? And his answer always is, well, I got all the answers to the test now. Why would I quit now? And I'm playing in an era where they can't touch me. If I see the blitz coming, I either throw it away just as long as I get it over the line of scrimmage or I lay down. But I know if I'm in the motion of throwing, if they hit me, I'm going to get 15 extra yards. Where back in our day, that was a form of intimidation.
Yeah, they could take 2 or 3 steps and still whack you in the head, and that happened a lot.
Yeah. It really is, no doubt about it, a different game. And I watch it, and the hard part for me is, like I said, the comparison. How do you compare, the players of yesterday to the players of today when the game is so different, and you hear these announcers, and they talk about these guys, and yeah, I get it, you got to do it, but how do you talk about how great this player was, when he's getting 10 targets a game, when you have some of the top wide receivers back in the day that only got like 4 targets a game, you just can't make those comparisons. It's insane to me.
I don't make them.
Well, I mean, listen, somebody's got to make them. You got the media.
You got the show. You got the show.
Hey, listen, I get it, man, but it's like, you got guys that are going into the Hall of Fame, with statistics that don't match up to the guys of yesteryear. but because they were so great in this era of football, they're so different. You know, those are the comparisons that I'm talking about. You know, because everybody does it. Everybody wants to compare LeBron to, you know, LeBron to Michael. Everybody wants to compare, you know, great players, you know, to Gretzky. Everybody wants to compare great players, you know, to, you know, whether you're talking about home run kings and Hank Aaron or Babe Ruth or whoever it is. You know, we make those comparisons, and it bugs the hell out of me when you make those comparisons because you're comparing two different eras of sport. And the games and all those games have evolved to a place where it just doesn't make sense because there is no comparison.
Yeah, maybe they should have decades. Guys who played in each decade have a chance to get in the Hall.
No, well, and something's got to be done because you know no one's taking into account the changes that transpired from one decade to another. And you're absolutely right. It's insane. Um, my brother, I'm gonna let you go, man, because I know that you know you've been flying all day. I got some of my listeners here. They got a bunch of questions that's going on. I'm gonna let you get some rest, man. Hey, listen, I tell my guests every week, man, to come on. Our time is our most valuable commodity, man. I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me talking some football, Jim.
Anything with you, my brother?
You got it, man. Let's tee it when it cools off in AZ, man.
Oh, it's nice out. It's still
It's
about
nice
100,
out.
104 right now, and it just rained. So,
Oh, it's
hey,
monsoon
it was. I
season.
just got
See?
back from It was. Yeah, I got back from Montana. It was over 100 there. It was over 90 in Tahoe. Man, it's been hot.
Wow. Wow. Well,
All right,
I'm
brother.
back.
I'll
I'm
see you
back in
back here in
Philly.
AZ.
All right, my man. Appreciate you. All right, guys. There you go. One Jim McMahon, my brother, no doubt about it, man. I love that dude. Um, let's see. We're gonna jump back into some more questions here, and I'm gonna go all the way back because I saw some comments. Let's see. You guys bear with me a little bit because you guys are firing questions and comments, when Jim and I was talking. Okay, there you go. Got that question. Let's see. Some of you guys, some of your comments. Let's see. Emilio asked the question: does purely pocket passes still have a place in the NFL? I think that question basically, comes down to how good your offensive line is. I think that the pass rush is kind of is starting to catch up, and pressures, 5-6 man pressures are starting to catch up um, with pocket passes. You got a guy like Tom Brady, who's not very mobile, but what he's learned how to do, he's learned how to manipulate the pocket. So when he feels pressure, he knows how to slide and step and move up in the pocket or move back in the pocket. I personally believe that the pocket passer is a dying breed because we're getting to the point now where pass rushes are becoming so dominant and being able to scheme different pressure blitzes in different situations really puts you in a situation where, as a quarterback, if you can't run, if you can't scramble, if you can't pick up yards, if you can't make something happen with your legs, then you almost can't play in this league anymore. If you look at all the quarterbacks that were drafted, and I believe, I forget the numbers, there's something like 7 or 8 quarterbacks drafted, in the first 20 draft picks this year, something insane like that. Mac Jones is the only guy that's perceived to really be a pocket passer. And listen, he might not be fleet of foot. He never had to run at Alabama, but times where you've seen him run, he can move and make it happen with his feet. Now, listen, he's not Justin Fields. He's not Zach Wilson, okay? But he can move enough to make defenses pay when you're in man coverage. If he can get out of the pocket, by the time the defense can react, he can pick up 15 to 20 yards and slide and get down, But the guy that's reluctant to do that, or the guy that can't do that, he's quickly a dying breed, in the NFL. Because if I know that he wants to sit on the spot, and that if I can move him off his spot, his completion percentage, his, accuracy, and his ability to be efficient drops exponentially, then as a defense coordinator, I'm going to attack that. That's what drives me crazy about these defense coordinators that love to bend but don't break and not put pressure on certain quarterbacks. I can understand. Listen, if you're playing against Russell Wilson, you got to be really smart about how you pressure him. You got to scheme the right way, okay? But if I'm playing against a guy like Tom Brady, I'm not going to just let him sit in the pocket. I'm going to try to scheme up the best that I can, try to disguise it the best that I can. But in certain situations, I want to speed up his clock with pressure, because pressure is every quarterback kryptonite. I don't care who they are. If you can create it and you can speed up their clock and you can make them feel uncomfortable, then you can make something happen in a positive way. So, Emilio, to your point, I do believe that the NFL is rapidly, getting to a place where the pocket passer is going to be a thing of the past. That's my opinion. There's others out there that don't see it the way that I see it, but hey, it is what it is. Let's see. Michael McClain says, his greatest concern is the pass defense. Well, I won't refute that in the least little bit, but I will tell you this. Sometimes the pass defense isn't all about the coverage. It's not all about the linebackers. It's not all about the secondary. Because if you're going to build your defense around the defensive line, and those guys are going to make the lion's share of the money, then those guys got to get on the quarterback. Whether you're talking about just a four-man rush, or whether you're talking about every once in a while you sprinkle in a safety or you sprinkle in a linebacker, those guys have to make it happen. Now, granted, the Eagles have to be better, in pass defense. They got to be better in the secondary. They got to be better at the linebacker position, but they all go hand in hand, because when you're getting pressure, it makes the guys on the back end look good. When you're covering well, it makes those guys up front look that much better, because they're going to get to the quarterback faster. So it's a balancing act when you're talking about the pass defense. Are you talking about the defensive line not getting pressure? Listen, the Eagles ranked third in sacks last year. Astonishingly, they ranked third in the NFL in total sacks. How does that happen? But they give up the amount of big plays that they gave up. Okay, sometimes it's about timeliness. Sometimes it's about the sacks that you get and when you get them, the pressures that you create and when you create them. If you're getting a sack on first down and then you turn around and you give up, a 15-yard run on second down, and then you turn around and give up a first down on third down, that sack really doesn't mean much. The sacks really have meaning on second down, when you create third and long, and then third and long situations, whether you come with a pressure, you just come four-man and you sack the quarterback and you force the punt. That's the effectiveness of pass defense, but that pressure has to come on both ends. You got to be good enough on the back end to allow the guys on the defensive line to do what they do, and you got to be good enough up front to get consistent pressure enough where those guys on the back end don't feel like they have to cover somebody for 4 or 5 seconds. That quarterback's got to go 1,001, 1,002, 1,003. That ball better be out of his hand or he better be on his behind. If not, you got problems on the back end. And that goes for the offensive line and the defensive line, Michael. All right. I'm going to entertain this one because he's talking about me. Sean wants to know, why couldn't Buddy's teams ever win in the postseason? What was preventing the Eagles from winning the Super Bowl with all those great defenses? Well, it wasn't really all about the defenses. The thing you have to understand about playoff football is when you get to the playoffs, you're talking about the 5 or 6 best offenses and the 5 or 6 best defenses in both conferences, okay? So when you're talking about best defenses and best offenses, you're talking about best coordinators, smartest coordinators that have the greatest ability to adjust to what's going on the field, okay? So no matter how good our defense could play, we couldn't generate enough points to be competitive. And that's not pointing the finger at the offense. That's just being truthful, And there were some games also where, quite honestly, the defense didn't play as well as it needed to. It was almost like we had to be offense and defense wrapped up in one. And that's not a shot at the offense at all. It's just the truth. The other thing you have to realize is that, Buddy's intent was to build a dominant defense. And then after building a dominant defense, okay, I'm going to improve the offensive side of the ball. See, there's a lot that you guys don't know about what transpired and what happened towards the end, okay? So I'll tell you this, because there's so many of the players here that are just completely, that are out of the picture, either, resting in peace or, whatever it may be. Buddy's intent, his last offseason, was to build an offensive line around Randall so that our offense could be more effective. Because at that point in time, he had built the defense, and he had the pieces that he wanted, and he knew that we were ready to ascend to the next level, okay? And I can remember 2 days before he got fired, I walked in his office, and he was watching film. And he said point blank to me, he said, there's these 2 offensive tackles out of Tennessee that everybody loves. Everybody's drooling over these 2 tackles out of Tennessee. This kid McCray and Anton Davis, who we moved up and drafted after Buddy got fired. He says to me, he looked at me and he said, you know what? Neither one of those guys are worth a wooden nickel. He said, but this kid right here from East Tennessee State, this kid is the kid that I'm going to draft. And we drafted before the Dallas Cowboys. Guess who that guy was? That guy, that tackle, was Eric Williams. Consequently, Buddy was fired 2 days later. The Philadelphia Eagles hired Rich Kotite. Rich Kotite and Harry Gamble gave up 2 first-round draft picks to move up and pick Anton Davis, who was a bust. And the Dallas Cowboys stayed patted where they were behind our original pick, and they picked Eric Williams, and it made all the difference in that organization as far as how the offensive line was built, okay? So if you're winning Super Bowls, you got to have a prolific offense and a prolific defense. Buddy just wasn't given enough time to build the offensive side of the ball. And people will say, well, 5 years, but you got to remember what the Philadelphia Eagles were when he took over. The Philadelphia Eagles was in the NFC East with the Washington football team, the New York Giants, the Dallas Cowboys, and the St. Louis Cardinals, okay? And they were dead last in a 5-team division for 5 to 6 years running. So he took a team in the cellar and rebuilt it. And rebuilds like that take time, because even though you didn't have any salary cap back then, a lot of what he wanted to do was hindered because, you had an owner that was trying to make money rather than win championships. Okay, you have to take that into consideration. When Jim Lachey left the San Diego Chargers, I want to say, or maybe the Cincinnati Bengals, he went to school with Keith Byers. He wanted to come to the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, Harry Gamble wouldn't let Buddy make the trade for him. Guess where he went? He went to the Washington Redskins, or the Washington football team, excuse me. And that year, the Washington football team won the Super Bowl because he was the missing link to what they needed. So there's a whole lot of things that I could share with you, a whole lot of things that I could talk to you about what happened during that era and why our team couldn't achieve what we wanted and what you guys as fans wanted us to achieve. Because in a lot of sense, Buddy's hands was tied, the players' hands were tied, and basically 2 years after Buddy was fired, every player wanted out of Philadelphia. I never wanted to leave Philadelphia because I didn't want to play for Philadelphia anymore. I needed to leave Philadelphia because I needed to get away from Norman Brayman, Harry Gamble, and Rich Kotite. There's no way in hell I could have played another season for them. Okay? But I would have loved if Jeffrey Lurie would have stepped in that last year and bought the team, and I could have stayed in Philadelphia and finished my career in Philadelphia. That's what I always wanted to do. But I knew that we was headed nowhere fast, and there was no way that we were going to be successful. And then, when Jerome Brown passed that offseason, I knew that, the ride was over and it was time to go. Okay. So I hope that kind of answers some of your questions about what transpired. And at the end of the day, you guys keep asking those questions, I'll share more and more about what truly happened and why our team, couldn't achieve the ultimate goal. Now, and listen, I'm happy and proud that in 2017 that Doug Peterson and our Birds, put that to rest. And I got a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos, but it would have meant so much more if it would have been right here with the Philadelphia Eagles. And there's not a guy that I played with that doesn't feel that way. Okay. All right. Let's get a couple more questions in before we wrap the show. Dre W says, I think the way that Ertz is being handled is a bad look for the Birds. Listen, he's under contract. So nothing is a bad look for the Eagles. If they're not going to get the value that they want, then you keep him on the roster. Do you think that $8 million that he's set to earn this year, that he's not going to show up and go to work and earn that $8 million if they don't trade him? So why is it a bad look for the Birds? Now, if they got the value that they felt was necessary for him, and you could move that $8 million off the salary cap, then it would make sense. But the Philadelphia Eagles are in a precarious position right now because most teams know that they want to move on. And the fact that they know that they want to move on from Zach Ertz, why would you offer anything of value for him when you know that the Eagles want to move on from him anyway? So they're waiting for the Eagles to say, you know what, hey, we waited as long as we could. We're going to give him away for a hot dog and a pack of beer, and call it a day. If I'm the Eagles, I'm never doing that, okay? I bring him back for another year, pay him the $8 million. He's going to want to increase his value. After that lackluster season that he had last year, he's going to want to show that he's still an elite level tight end. And who benefits from that? Jalen Hurts and the offense, Philadelphia Eagles organization. So it's not a bad look. It's just they're in a precarious position right now where, they can't get what they feel is fair market value for Zach Ertz, and I agree with them. Don't do it until you get what you want. Because, at the end of the day, if you got to bring him back, then bring him back. All right. Jeremiah Pitts wants to know, do you think the offense and defense would be better with a different scheme and complement each other? More running, screen game, to have a greater time of possession, and defense play better because of longer offensive time of possession. I don't think anybody really knows, Jeremiah, what the situation is going to be. I get the sense that, the veterans on this team feel like they have something to prove. So at the end of the day, they're going to play better. If the offensive and defensive lines can stay healthy, I think the scheme, will benefit. A new, fresh scheme will benefit not only the veterans on this team, but open up competition for the young guys on this team. I'm hopeful that we run the football more, but when you listen to some of the things that came out about Jeffrey Lurie and his Tuesday afternoon powwows, with Doug Peterson, and asking him why'd you run the ball so much? Why didn't you throw the ball more? Why, did you make the decision that you made here? If Nick Sirianni has the freedom to do what he feels is necessary in running this offense, in developing this young quarterback, then hey, you make good points. That's probably going to be the situation. But if he's handcuffed and they got to run the ball like crazy, who knows? And the problem when you're installing a new offense and a new defense, 9 times out of 10, the offense is always going to be ahead, because it's a lot easier for offenses, to figure it out than it is for defense. Because on defense, it's kind of like, you have to communicate. There has to be talking that goes on, especially if you're a multiple defense, because that means that you're morphing. You're going from one defense to another because of motion, because of a shift, because of something that's going on. You're multiple. So where defenses get themselves in trouble is when players get lockjaw, and that more than likely happens with young players, because young players are still in their mind trying to figure out what's my responsibility, what am I supposed to do, what do I got on run, and what do I got on pass. So they're thinking as the ball is being snapped. They're not reacting because they don't know the offense, the defense well enough, to just plainly react. On the offense is different. You call a play, the wide receivers got a route, the tight ends got a route, the lions got a protection. The running backs are part of that protection, or he's hot, out of the backfield. Okay, it's different. So the offense is, in my opinion, is going to be a little more ahead of the defense at the beginning of the year. But as time goes on and the young guys begin to get their feet up under them, and the young guys begin to understand what it is that they're doing, and if you get some good leaders, I think that, the linebacker that they traded for from Minnesota is a guy that's verbal. He's going to talk. Hey, talk to me. What are we doing? How quickly can you get Rodney McLeod back, off of injury, so that he's the guy on the back end that's communicating with everybody. Darius Slay will communicate. But you got some young guys that don't understand the power of communication, because when you're not talking, that's when mistakes happen. That's when you get beat, So I do think that, the scheme will help across the board, but I think that the offense is going to be ahead of the defense, and it's going to take a couple of weeks for the defense, to catch up, and we'll see where it all goes. All right, I'm gonna give the last question to my homeboy here, Lawrence Melton. He wants to know, are there any veteran cornerbacks that might interest you besides Steven Nelson and Richard Sherman? And listen, there's guys out there, but these two guys are probably the two most preeminent guys available. And I don't want the Eagles drafted, a cornerback in the 3rd round. I'm not looking for them to go and get a young guy that they got to develop and so on and so forth. You got Steven Nelson. In my opinion, what was probably going to happen if you move Zach Ertz, then that frees up enough cap space for you to pursue a Steven Nelson. Richard Sherman is probably looking for a team that's going to be competitive. And it all depends on the scheme that you run. If you're going to run a cover 3 scheme, then you want a guy like Richard Sherman. If you're going to run a man scheme, you don't want no parts of Richard Sherman. Not at this point in time, not at this age of his career. He can give you something, but at this part of his career, if it's a man scheme, he's going to get beat more times than he's going to win. He's a cover 3 guy, a guy that, that he's going to line up in cover 3 in disguise and make you think that he's in cover 3 or that he's in zone, before you know it, he's jumping around and taking it the other way. So I'm not so sure Lawrence, what's really out there. But if there was something better out there, then those names would pop up. They would come to the forefront. Right now, it's Steven Nelson and Richard Sherman. And it's just a matter of, whether they can free up the cap space to bring in Steven Nelson, or depends on what type of scheme that they think they want to run to be able to bring in a Richard Sherman if that works out. All right. All right. That's the show for today, guys. Hey, listen, I want to thank my friend, my teammate, my brother, Jim McMahon, for joining me, briefly today. It's awesome to have you guys' questions today. And get you guys kind of caught up. We're all chomping at the bit, trying to get to a point, where we get the training camp so we can start to get a sense of what this Philadelphia Eagles team is going to look like. We start, tasting some football and smelling some football in the air. All of that stuff we waited with bated breath, to start experiencing again. Just a quick note, make sure you guys, and I will post next week. I'm going to be traveling next Tuesday during showtime. So I'm going to bump the show, and you'll see it in the promos for next week's show. I'm going to bump the show to next Wednesday. Same time, same channel, be right here on Facebook, be right here on YouTube. But instead of next Tuesday, it will be next Wednesday. You guys will see the promotions, coming towards the end of the week. So you guys will know what's going on. You can let everybody know that this is where we are. Hey, listen, as always, I tell you guys, be good to each other and take care of each other. But most importantly, love each other. I'll see you guys right back here next week. Great to have you. Thank you for your questions. Look forward to being with you guys next week. Peace.